this math routine is called Same But Different. I've got this from Sue Looney, and what we're going to do is the activity, but kind of a little bit of a twist to it to make it online friendly. If you want some links, so you don't have to create these. You can just get them right off the website. There's a bunch of them there, which is a fabulous resource. You can go ahead and click on those links. And the activity we're going to do is just through the teleconferencing tool. So you're just going to be in Collaborate, or if you use Zoom or whatever else it is, and you're going to use the chat box. I'm going to, as the instructor, take care of all the writing on the screen, and you all are going to write in the chat box. And on slide 7 is where I am, but you can just observe and collaborate. These two images are up here, and I'm curious if you see something that is the same about them, or if you see something that is different about them. And we're going to do something called a chat waterfall, which means that we all have a really nice amount of wait time to type in the chat, and then at the same time, we all hit enter. Now, during that time, you could type in same and whatever you thought was the same, or you could write different and whatever it is. It sometimes is useful to begin by writing same or different, but sometimes they're both in the same. Either one works. So take a moment. In the chat box, what do you notice that is the same but different in these two images? And don't hit enter yet, just type it in and hold on to that thought. All right, go ahead and hit enter when you're ready. And what we're going to see is this kind of flood in of lots of responses. Now, this is particularly nice for students who might be nervous to have a voice in your class, because they have the opportunity to kind of get lost in the crowd at the same time as accountability for their thinking. So you can, take a record of this, you can see what each student's writing, but they're not really the center of attention. So that's one of the reasons I like using this strategy. And right now, what I'm going to do as the instructor is review some of these and select certain ones for people to discuss even further. I wanted to start off with Stephanie. You mentioned this idea of 1/4. I'm going to put it here in our box. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see this? You said the same. The first one has 1/4 blocked off, or the white piece shows 1/4 missing. The number line is representing 1/4. How do you see that here?
So I noticed in the pie circle that there's these two little black lines that create kind of like a pizza piece. And so I was like, originally I noticed that there was a white piece missing, but then I looked closer and I noticed that there was those two black lines. And so I know that there's in a fraction that there's 4 pieces. So that's our denominator for fourths. So I noticed that it's 1 out of the 4 pieces are either blocked off or white. And then for the second one, it's kind of hard to see, but it's showing from 0 to 1/4 with the little blocks. I guess that's what they are.
I'm hearing 1/4 in both of those. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And I do want to grab a couple others. Naomi, you mentioned they both show less than 1. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you saw this.
I needed to put my mic on. Because if they were to show 1 whole, the entire circle would be full. And if it were to show 1 whole on the number line, that little bar would stretch from 0 all the way to 1. And in both cases, that doesn't happen. So I know that less than 1 is being either shaded in the circle or not shaded. In both cases in the circle, you could see less than 1. And then in the number line, you can see less than 1 because of the 1/4.
Neat. That is a really cool observation that they both have something in common here. We can now see the whole if you looked at that kind of blue notation. Um, T, tell us, you mentioned something very similar to Stephanie. Can you tell us what you noticed?
I noticed that in the circle, 1/4 is not shaded, but in the number line, 1/4 is shaded. So it's like a mirror image. In the first one, you might look at 3/4 first because it's the shaded part, and in the second bottom one, you might look at 1/4 first because it's shaded, and so they both show 1/4 and they both show 3/4.
Neat. So in the way you describe the difference, you're actually bringing out a similarity. That
Yeah.
that there's the null space, the not space, the empty space. Very cool. Lisa, you mentioned something about the images that are used. Tell us about what you know about modeling.
I know that you can model in many different ways. For example, our first one is a fraction, circular fraction. That same model could have been done in a rectangular fashion and cut in 4 pieces as well. And then I think as we move up in our thinking, we go from more the visual model to the number line model, so we can see that 1/4 also on the number line.
Lovely. And Annalise, I see that you mention equal sized pieces. Can you tell us why that is important and how are those the same in these images?
So yeah, so the foundational piece of fractions is they have to be equal sized pieces. It's just not a matter of counting the number of pieces and then the number in all, because very often we can give a shape to kids that's partitioned in not equal pieces and they still think it's a fraction because they count the number of pieces shaded and the pieces in all. So I'm always looking to make sure it's equally partitioned. And so here with that area model, having those 4 equal sized pieces, and I did see it, typically we ask kids about the shading part. As opposed to the unshading, but it could be representing 1/4 as well if we asked what portion is not shaded. But then I do see it as that flip where in the circle we've got 3/4 shaded, and in the second one, the number line, we have 1/4 represented, that distance on the number line.
Very cool. Yeah, so, we do have these different ways of seeing it. And one thing, I don't know about you all, but my students, when I first talk about number lines, there is this discussion about, do we count the tick marks or do we count the space in between? And so one thing that I think is really important here is the connection that we make between there are 4 pieces of that pie. There are 5 tick marks, but 4 spaces on the number line, and kind of bringing that out regularly in our discussion to see that partition. Yes. There was one other thing that I was prepared to discuss, but I didn't see it in our chats, and that was the idea of this piece kind of finishes, the bottom piece finishes the top piece. If I had done 2 of the same representations, 2 pies, for example, I think a lot of kids see that, like, yes, you can fit this piece in. It's like a puzzle piece. But when we have different representations, that's not always as obvious that 1/4 fits into the missing part there, which is always a neat one to discuss if they can work flexibly in seeing those. And then, so just as a heads up, I'd love to hear if one of your same or difference were mentioned today, would you go ahead and put an emoji in the chat box? I want to see who felt like they were seen and heard today. And typically when I do this routine, I actually ask students to put the emojis in while we're talking, like just to keep them engaged, keep them understanding when their thought was said, maybe just said differently. Forgot to do it this time around, but glad to see that there were lots of voices heard. So this comes out of the same but different routine. I'm on slide 9. I would love to give a shout out here to Sue Looney, who is with us today, and also that you have an opportunity to join in this raffle giveaway. The link is there on slide 9. Sue, thanks for making this strategy so openly available to everyone and lots of great resources. Hope I did it justice, and just wanted to give you a quick shout out also.
Thank you so much for taking this routine and making it usable for us online. I'm so excited and thrilled. And what you just outlined there was just absolutely brilliant and made me think about young children as well as older children. So thank you for showcasing it. And I hope people will definitely take advantage of the images that are just all there for you to grab, regardless of the content area that you're looking for.